Da 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 da. It's Prose Notes. That's.
We have a song that leads in.
I know.
Welcome to Prose Notes, y'all. A graduate writing podcast.
No, that's
Samantha's wanting to sing.
That's Little Mermaid. I shouldn't do that.
DMC. They would. They. I actually believe Disney.
Yeah, Disney. It was not that close. It just made me think of The Little Mermaid. It wasn't The Little Mermaid. Hello, everyone.
It's Prose Notes.
It's Prose Notes. I'm your weird host, Samantha Demerly, PhD.
And I'm your comparatively slightly less weird one, Nolan, a PhD student.
Hell yeah, we love it. We're going to open this episode with Spotify Wrapped just came out, so we're going to do Semester Wrapped because that seems embarrassing and fun. Nolan, what was your top writing genre of this semester?
Oddly enough, as an education student, because I took a history of education class, I would say historiography or like historical writing. Yeah, and it's a kind of writing I hadn't really done in the past, so I definitely switched up my genres from last year.
Hell yeah.
What about you?
I mean, I feel like this is a cheap answer for me, but I don't really write too many things. But my top genre is almost always feedback. So I wrote a lot of pages
Gosh,
of
if I counted up my feedback,
feedback.
maybe.
Yeah.
Be interesting to count that up. That's it. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
so that's my top genre. All right, if we're getting into numbers, how many pages do you think you wrote this semester?
Numbers, this is probably a low for me. Not an all-time academic career, but definitely in graduate school, probably only 40 or so pages. It was only in 2 classes. One was not as writing intensive. It was a law class. So, yeah, those are pretty rookie numbers. Going to have to pump those up next year.
Yeah. Feedback is hard to quantify in terms of pages. So if I were to guess how many word comments I posted this semester, it would probably have to be in the thousands. I mean, I give a lot of feedback.
A lot of feedback. I guess I do too. I had a bunch of papers to grade.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would probably be history or historiography, and then probably outlines. I did a couple of outlines, both for some research articles I'm working on and one for class. And then feedback, having to grade students' papers, that's definitely up there.
It's definitely up
Interesting.
there. And it is a skill. So
Also, emails. This was an email-heavy semester.
Email-heavy
my least
semester.
favorite genre.
Emails upon emails. Yeah, I probably was sending about, like 10 plus emails per day.
Gross.
That's so gross.
I hope this email finds you well. It does not.
It never does. It finds me sobbing in a corner. Just kidding. I'm a professional. Those are some good semester wrapped numbers.
It's good to reflect on where we've been.
Yes, and where we may be next term as spring will find us in January. So today we are doing our third of the Writing Center 101 episodes. Mm-hmm. This is our eTutoring episode. eTutoring is the KU Writing Center's third, obviously, modality.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a weird thing to explain to people, mostly because eTutoring has no other cognate.
I feel like people might think video conferencing is e-tutoring, but no, e-tutoring is its own thing.
So e-tutoring appointments are asynchronous online appointments, and they are technically appointments that provide students with written feedback. So students can schedule these appointments through our online scheduling application, WC Online. They can upload their assignments and paper drafts and receive written feedback at the end of the appointment time. So you really are like, you're signing up for 2 p.m. and at 2:59 or 2:50, you're going to get an email with your feedback that you have requested for that period of time. So e-tutoring can be great for students who have kind of few clear questions about their work or who have a mostly finished draft and are looking for some final comments. With e-tutoring, much like our synchronous appointments, we will offer you comments, suggestions, and kind of prompting questions to help guide your revisions. But our consultants will really only be able to read about 10 pages within that hour
On a good
long.
day.
Yeah, within that hour-long appointment time. But we will send you our written thoughts at the end of the appointment.
Yeah, and actually, I really like that you mentioned that it's an appointment. So
Yes.
make sure your document is uploaded ahead of time. You can be marked as a miss or a no-show if you fail to do that. And yeah, it's a regular appointment for me. I'll work on your paper for 45-ish minutes, take those 5 minutes to wrap up, and try and put all the comments that I would have given you in person, into this kind of note that we like to leave at the front of all of our e-tutoring to kind of summarize the work that I did for, that hour.
Yeah, so e-tutoring appointments are unique in the sense of you're getting kind of two different types of feedback. We will have that opening note, which is where we try to summarize our main thoughts about your work.
Usually 2 or 3, what were the 2 or 3 things that I noticed or worked on the most?
And then there will often be kind of a running commentary. So with a Word document, you'll be able to see the consultant's comments as they read through your document and are kind of pointing things out. So we do ask that students upload Word documents because it's the easiest for us to comment on. PDFs don't work.
That's great. Yeah, so we use the review tab on Word. But that being said, if you do use an e-reader, you can still do e-tutoring, and we leave comments in the text, and we have a way that we can kind of mark those off so that when you hear it on your e-reader or your screen reader, you know that it's one of our comments. So we can, I guess that's maybe an advantage, right? It's accommodating in that way.
Yes, we can be accommodating in a variety of ways with e-tutoring, which we can do that with our synchronous appointments as well, but there's just a little bit more flexibility with the e-tutoring appointments. I've kind of already mentioned this, but we'll talk about kind of who these appointments are best for. We'll talk about some preparation tips, how to prepare for an e-tutoring. And then, we'll get into our candid bit where we talk about how consultants really
Peel
feel.
back that curtain.
Peel back the curtain, demystify the writing center. Do we need to? Yeah, probably.
That's the podcast.
Yes, that's the whole podcast. You're
or
right.
At least half of it.
I've forgotten our purpose. So in preparing for e-tutoring appointments, there's kind of a twofold suggestion here. E-tutoring is asynchronous, so you're going to, as a student, want to make sure you have all of your materials kind of ready to go, and that you upload, like you said, that document before the appointment time.
Upload on time.
Yeah.
Also, a thing though, I believe you can upload multiple documents. If you do that, again, given the time constraints, right, I can only get 8 to 10 pages. I'm just going to read the most recent one. So whatever the last one you uploaded before I click on the appointment, that's what I'm going to work on, unless you in your instructions specify otherwise. So just note that that's how people are going to approach that. So yes, you can upload a draft when you make the appointment. If you work on it and edit and have a new version, you can still upload that, and we'll be able to work on that.
Yeah. So in our past 2 episodes, we were talking about our in-person appointments and our video conferencing appointments. And often in those appointments, we mentioned the conversation element. I think preparing for e-tutoring is analogous to that conversation. So we want to know, as you're scheduling that appointment, what kinds of questions you have. What do you want us to focus on in the documents that you're uploading? Is it a particular section? Are you worried about your organization? Basically, providing your consultant some directions for how to read and what to look at is really, really helpful in e-tutoring appointments.
So yeah, and that's a good point, because this is probably the modality that we offer that to be the most effective for you, the student, requires the most work on your end ahead of time.
Yes. And that can be tricky. Sometimes students don't know what they need or don't have questions, but giving us anything is going to be more helpful than uploading your document and kind of providing no context for the assignment, which we do get that a lot. We can handle it. We're professionals, but it makes our lives easier and gives us a better way to support you in your writing if you're giving us a little bit more information.
Yeah, and so this happens, right? It happens not often, but it'll happen, right? Where, when you make the appointment and you choose eTutoring, you can choose the things you like to work on. So you can choose on like improve clarity, improve organization, all of these things. And sometimes you'll get an eTutoring that's just those things. And it's frustrating is the word I'll use. And it's not frustrating. It's not being frustrated with the student or the client. It's being frustrated in that I feel I can't be as effective as possible. It's if I had a little bit more direction, I feel like I could, help you in those specific ways that you're after. And in the absence of the guidance, I find I kind of will try and pay attention. If you're saying work on the grammar, work on clarity, I'll think about those things. But I kind of have a default mode, right? We all have our default modes, way of looking at the world, way of looking at writing. And I'll just kind of use that. And I hope it matches with your goals. And so in my opening notes, I'll hedge. Like, I'll say, like, I hope my comments, help you have a good revision process. But if I don't know what you're after, it's hard for me to, tailor the work that I'm doing to what you're after. So as much clarity as possible is always appreciated and just helps you get the best, version.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of having that sense that eTutoring can be really flexible for the student, but it also requires maybe a little bit more effort or more explanation on, you, the student's part, I think is valuable to know in order to properly navigate our services.
Yeah, so now if we've talked about, how to prepare, the question then becomes, right, who are they best for? And I think you have to understand how to prepare to know who they're best for, right?
Yeah.
So we think, and we talked about this especially in the in-person, but also a bit in our last episode, right? If you've already had that appointment, if you've had an appointment where you've had that conversation with a person, then I think it can be really, really helpful to move into an e-tutoring space because then you can know how to ask those questions and that can come up in those earlier appointments.
Yeah. E-tutoring, just because of some of the technical difficulties of it, not that they're difficult, but they're just different than our
realities.
Yeah, different realities. We often recommend e-tutoring for students who have those very clear questions or concerns with regard to a section of their paper or, a couple of paragraphs or, sentences that they really just want to work through. So if you're familiar with our services as well, e-tutoring can be effective. If you've been working with a consultant for the semester and you just need their final stamp of approval for some revisions, e-tutoring can be a great option because you may not need that conversation, but you just want that final kind of look at the document as it currently stands.
Or, we've had that in-person appointment or the video conference and you have a clear idea of the feedback you'd like. And so sometimes it is just the numbers game of can you get through a couple more pages than we could get through, in that in-person appointment. And so, when I do have a regular, I try to, encourage, let's have an in-person or a video conference once a week, and then let's have this e-tutoring. So what's nice with e-tutoring is, the one I had this year, or one of them, she would upload probably a 40-page document, a chapter of the dissertation she was working on, and she would say, hey, can you look at pages, 18 to 26 or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, of course. And it was nice because she was able to understand that, of course, I wouldn't be able to skim everything, and she was able to, kind of curtail or kind of cordon off the part she wanted me to look at. And then, the specific things she was after for that e-tutoring appointment that we had talked about earlier in the week. And that I think that just really maximizes what e-tutoring is capable of.
Yeah. E-tutoring is also very popular for students, for graduate students who I think are nervous about asking for help, asking for feedback on particular documents, and we get it. This can be a vulnerable ask to have somebody read over your document and kind of assess it and, give you suggestions. But much like asking feedback from a faculty member, you're still going to want to give us some direction. So as weird as it is asking for help, I think e-tutoring is actually a space where you need to be the most directive with what you're asking for in order for us to be able to best serve your needs.
And so then, the last piece, where we try to deal with, the ideal possible world, but if you just absolutely positively just can't make it to campus, don't have that hour in your week to, devote to in-person, or video conferencing or just if like your social battery isn't there for whatever reason,
absolutely,
go ahead and use eTutoring. It's better to have any, interaction with us and to get that feedback than none. And, I think graduate students tend to like it. We have a lot going on in our lives and, the hour and 20 it takes, the 10 minutes to get to campus and then the hour appointment and then the 10 minutes to get off to campus. It's like, well, I could just be working on my own thing while a different person works on my eTutoring. So we get that there's a very practical reality that is appealing about eTutoring.
Yeah, absolutely. We offer all of these, please use them any of our appointments in whatever combination you need. We totally get it. We're just trying to provide you with like a little bit of insight, a little bit of the peek behind the curtain, as we've been saying, to why we do what we do and what might be valuable and effective for you if you're thinking of like the best way to use our services.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great way to kind of then lead into what we do really think about them. I do like eTutoring. Maybe I'll start with a con just coming off of kind of something that we talked about is I do feel at times, and it's related to how you utilize eTutoring, I feel like this one is maybe the most prone to becoming almost a crutch. It's just, it's happened, right, where people use eTutoring and, if I'm working with a regular and we're working on a long project, it'll be eTutoring, and sometimes the only development I'll see is what's going on in our eTutoring sessions and not work in between. And it's in those cases where I'm like, please come talk to me, and we can talk and have those in-person appointments. And for the case that I'm thinking about that happened, and it kind of was able to, I think, fix how this person was seeing the Writing Center as a support, as a place to learn and grow rather than kind of a crutch. Because it is the thing, we're not here to edit.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people come to eTutoring wanting the editing.
Yes. And this is, I think, a difficulty I have with eTutoring because of the very varied way that we talk about feedback as a university, as an institution. I say feedback, and I mean a very specific thing, or you might talk to a faculty member or faculty advisor, and when they say feedback, they mean something different. They might mean something a little bit more akin to editing or proofreading. And so I feel like the way that the Writing Center thinks about feedback, especially in eTutoring, is so non-directive. Like it's still that kind of modeling of either rules or ideas. We try to ask a lot of open-ended questions. We're not changing sentences for you. If we are mentioning a sentence, we may offer a couple of ways to revise that sentence, or we're asking questions about your intentionality. And that type of feedback can be really helpful. It can also be not what you're looking for.
Right.
And so I think you're right that sometimes students come to eTutoring with a very different expectation of what they're going to get. And I feel like for me, it's that disconnect that I like the least.
And so hence this whole episode of what it is and kind of what it's about. And related to that, right? So like you'll get your eTutoring, you'll get the Word document back, and you'll probably just get a bunch of like questions of like, why did you word it this way? Or what were you trying to accomplish, by using these words or these, structures? And so it can be tricky, and part of our work then on our end, right, is trying to anticipate how you will respond to the open-ended questions that we ask. And so this is my practice. This isn't necessarily everyone's. I'll nest my replies. I'll highlight a thing. I'll ask my question. And then I'll reply to that underneath it and say, the point I'm trying to get at here is this, and here's why. Rather than having 6 highlights on a page or whatever, or 6 comments, you might only get like 2 or 3 comments per page for me, but there will be multiple under each of them as I'm trying to clarify, because I don't want to leave that up to chance or just, you misinterpreting what I'm trying to convey.
Yeah. I think this is a good moment for me to mention how long it takes to write effective, in my brain, an effective written comment to something. Because when I get a lot of feedback from students who, claim that written feedback is faster for them because, we get it. Like, talking to somebody does take a lot of time. You have to sit down or, schedule.
You can just read it all quick,
Yeah, and you can read written feedback faster than you can have a conversation. I hear that. I acknowledge it. But the way we work at the Writing Center is that we are spending so much time trying to craft a clear and effective way of communicating our thoughts as readers to you. And that takes so much time.
For sure.
I made the joke in our little semester wrapped bit, but like my genre of writing is feedback because that's my job and it's what I spend the most time doing. It is a skill and it takes time. It takes time for me to like figure out how I'm going to phrase this question, how I want you to start thinking about the types of revisions that you might need to do in this section, especially for graduate students. I'm often offering like multiple options of how you could revise this based on, again, what you're trying to do with this document. And I don't have access to that if I'm just reading your draft. I don't have access to your brain in that moment and your justification for certain rhetorical moves. And so I have to be the one who's like, well, if you're thinking about this, then here's an option. If you're thinking about this,
you kind of have to plan for every eventuality. Yeah, and that's the challenge. Just eTutoring. So again, we've talked about this is the one perhaps with the most just physical or practical limitations of, especially if you're not providing comments on this kind of feedback for XYZ reasons.
Yeah.
I have to guess at XYZ reasons, and I'm only going to get to the ones that seem the most obvious to me. But what seems obvious to me might seem not obvious to you, and you might think other things seem obvious. So that's also the thing. And that's why, honestly, especially for eTutoring, read the bios of who you're working with.
Yeah.
A lot of us will try and include like what we'd like to work on, our hobbies. Just I know it's really brief and it doesn't really tell the full picture of who we are, but I think especially for eTutoring, try and find a tutor either you've worked with or a consultant you've worked with in the past and know it works well, or a person you think based on their blurb might be able to help you more effectively.
Yeah. If you've never noticed it, when you log onto our scheduling system and you click on an appointment box, there's a little biography of the consultant at the beginning. It's usually like
two sentences.
2 sentences. But you're right. Like there's usually a kind of little explanation of
like academic interest kind of section.
Academic interest, what you like to work on, or like what your kind of research focus is. And that might be a good way for you to figure out if this person is like thinking about your genre in the same way.
And again, maybe I'll qualify, especially if you're not sure the type of commentary you're looking for, because all of us are capable of it. But I get lots of ELPs or just School of Education people because I have ELPs in my bio, and I feel like they feel like I have an idea of what they're talking about. And then as they're working on their project, I can recommend them to other people that I know in the Writing Center. And so this is kind of, maybe it's not cons. It's just the reality of it. But I do think there are positives.
Oh, absolutely.
One of which is just on my end. It's a little bit of a break. I like to look at my schedule kind of the night before, see what appointments I've got coming up. And if I see back-to-back e-tutorings, sweatpants, for sure. Coming in, it's, it becomes a casual day for me. And I'm not casual with your writing. It's just casual in my appearance.
Yes. You're not having to perform in the same way.
Exactly.
And I would agree. I think e-tutoring is that little bit of like the social break for the work that we do. In the last episode, we were ranking our modalities based on like the medals. E-tutoring is definitely my bronze medal, but I do get socially tired. And so e-tutoring, like you're saying, is a nice little break for me from like talking to somebody after maybe a long day of talking to people.
Yeah, and so it's my number 2.
Your silver medal?
Silver medal. I think e-tutoring can serve a very direct and clear and good purpose, especially in concert with these other modalities that we've been talking about. But also just like sometimes I'll toss on some classical music and just get to working on your paper. And it's just kind of, it can be a really nice and satisfying way to kind of pass the time in the morning. The other thing, too, though, kind of related to this idea of just the comments that we're leaving, it becomes almost like a puzzle in my mind of there's all these comments I've left in the document, and there's this opening note, and how do I bridge the gap? I think in my practice, I think a lot about that relationship between what's in my note and what am I going to leave them to discover in the comments. And I think sometimes creating like almost like some tension, like some foreshadowing using like literary devices. Like I talk about these things, but I don't go, crazy in depth up in my note. And just, again, like letting the client discover that as they read through the comments.
Yeah.
I think, at least I think it's effective, so I choose to do it. I guess I don't get that direct. I guess I do have some of the regulars, and they do appreciate the notes. But I think, I guess if any of if any of my coworkers are listening, I'd really encourage you to think about that relationship between what's in your opening note and what needs to be there, and what's the purpose of that opening note versus all the ground that you can cover in your comments. Because I think they're related but distinct, and so that's where I kind of approach it from. And so it's the puzzle in my own mind is maybe part of the reason why I really like it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the puzzle there is fun for me, but I also think that almost like puzzle element for me is the repetition of it. So, and not repetition and we're saying the same things, but you can go back to that feedback as often as you need because it is written. And I think that's the one benefit of written feedback over in person. It's permanent to the sense of like, we're going to offer you links to resources or handouts or like, modeling a sentence in a way that you can keep that for, however long you need it. And I think there's value in having like basically the paper trail of the type of feedback that you're getting over the course of a document or a project. Now, I think what's hard about written feedback is also the same issue of if you're getting written feedback from multiple people, you're going to get conflicting comments. And now you have to look at all those comments and go,
what do I do?
what is appropriate for me? And I will tell you, you can ignore comments. As students, as graduate students, please feel empowered to ignore the stuff we say if you don't agree with it.
And I will say that. I'll, open my comments with just, as a reader, this is what came up. Or I'll say, I don't know if this is a convention in your genre or your discipline. To me, it seems like maybe this ought to be the case, but if this is the convention, if this is how you encounter it in the works that you read, like, ignore me. And I think part of that then, too, is, on our end is admitting, like, it's just a comment, and maybe letting our readers, our clients know that it's just a comment, and you can choose to do with that what you will. And I include that in my notes, like, take what's useful, don't take what's not useful to you, and go from there. Yeah.
We, I think as graduate consultants, we're exposed to a lot of different genres. We have a pretty good sense of, what's kind of standard in biology versus what's kind of standard in the humanities, depending on our particular knowledge bases. But I don't know everything. I'm not we're jacks of all trades.
Masters of none. And I work with a lot of art history folks. I don't know what happens in art history. I always have this might, I don't know. Just go with what the other articles you've read or the books you've seen have said. So it's exactly that.
Yeah. So we don't know everything. We're going to try our best to give you feedback as smart, intelligent readers, but there's going to be stuff that we make a comment on and you go, well, that's not standard for my field. Feel free to ignore it. We don't know what's standard to your field. Not always. Sometimes we do, but it is what it is.
And so maybe in terms of what we hope you get out of it, right? It's the same things, right? So we hope you do get feedback from us that you can implement in your revisions. Like you've been saying, there are these permanent comments. They exist in writing. You can come back to them. But also, maybe we hope it's good practice for advocating for yourself as a writer. Yeah. That I think is maybe a bit different than our other modalities. Yeah. Because you have to be clear and direct with us about what you need, what you want, and then you have to navigate how you respond to our comments, and you have the power to choose what feels useful, what isn't helpful. So
and we sincerely hope that you're getting clear answers to the questions you're asking us. Sometimes the difficulty with e-tutoring is that there's just a little bit of miscommunication because of the asynchronous element of it. But if you ask us a clear, directed question, we're going to give you a clear, directed answer to it, or try to. If we don't know the answer to your question, we'll
try and point you in the right direction.
Yeah, we'll try to help you find that answer in some way, shape, or form. And like Nolan said, the way that we are navigating your paper is still as a reader. So we're still going to be thinking about kind of what's effective at just like the readerly level.
Like the base rhetorical. Yeah.
So we hope that if you love eTutoring already, you continue to use it. If you have never used eTutoring before, try it out.
Give it a go.
Try it out in conjunction with our other
in-person or video
with
conferencing.
our other modalities. Anyone listening to this, give each
give them all a chance.
Yeah, give them all a chance. They're all great.
Mix and match.
Mix and match. They're all great in their own particular way. And we love a little variety too.
Yeah.
Clears the brain.
It does. And it's nice. You know, I only work usually for 2 hours at a time, but it's actually nice when I have different kinds of appointments in a day because it stretches my brain in different directions. So.
We love a stretchy brain.
Brain should be wet at the very least.
What do you mean? Brain should be smooth. I'm just kidding. We got wrinkly brains.
I want a wrinkled, moist brain.
Wrinkled, moist brain. That's the ideal brain.
All right. We've lost the plot. Happy writing, y'all.
Happy writing. Have a great day. Please come to the Writing Center. We love you so much. Goodbye.
Bye.